wanted to just say thanks so much for having me. And I'm coming to you live from the Quantum, that is also known as Hot Springs, Arkansas, where I am here currently scouting out a couple of projects and introducing myself to this part of the country, which I've never been before, and it's incredible. If you've never been to Hot Springs, Arkansas, it's a magical place. And as we get into the kind of quantum and beauty and aesthetics, this would be the place. It's full of um, energy and crystal technology and love and really a lot of good vibes. Um, and so, yeah, let's kick it. Josh and I did a tech check, which was super fun. And I think that first slide is funny because it says professional work. And I don't really know what that means because everything that we do, I think, is work. So I don't know how to qualify it as professional or not professional. But here's some things that I've done just to give a quick context. So then Josh and I can kick into a more interesting conversation. In a way, I'd rather like not show work, but I understand like we need to set a context. So I think before we kick in and I even describe what this is, I think like let's just do like 3 seconds of silence. And if we all just take a deep breath in together. So we can all land in this magical place. We're in this 3D reality. What I'd like to talk about is how to pick things from the quantum field and what that means and how to use that, and talk about ideas and where they're coming from and how to put them into like a lottery ball machine and shake them all up and then see which balls come out of that machine if you play the lottery, which I also think is magic. And let's pick some lottery numbers from the quantum. But just for reference, so I am an architect, an interior designer, a product designer. I do lighting, furniture. I've designed toys and technology. I've designed corporate headquarters and museums and hotels, houses. My dad made me design decks and fences and roofs. And my dad made me also build the tools that I needed to then do the project. So it kind of runs the gamut. Professionally, I swing on the spectrum between interior design and architecture. And it runs the gamut, like I said, from corporate headquarters from Fortune 50 companies to cannabis dispensaries and retail stores and all the things in between. Generally, the projects kind of land on the whoa side of the spectrum. So even the multi-family housing projects, like this one I did in the Arts District in LA, Ava Arts District, is also like, whoa, like what is that? Because we're mixing things together, and you'll see in some of the slides what that means. Josh and I, you mentioned this word multidisciplinary before, and I just like don't understand how you can't be multidisciplinary designing today. Like I'm using 27 tools when I'm designing something. So right there, like that's multidisciplinary. It doesn't matter that I'm an architect and an interior designer and a product designer. It doesn't matter, right? What matters is like I'm grabbing things from the quantum, from this reality, from the fifth dimension, from dream space, from chats with my 3-year-old, and I'm putting them together. And that's a great example of this image that you're seeing here. This is the Cayton Children's Museum. That's my son in the top of the net, actually. And so the whole museum design came from dreams and came from language. Like even the conception of this project, I was using words like armadillo. So you see this wood thing on the left side. That's the built-in building inside the museum, and it's based off of this armadillo. So those little shifts in the wood are based on the armadillo skin, and then we use this word called zipper. So you go up the netting through the zipper into the net above. And that netting was for a whole different experience. And so you can see the world from above. And so the children have all these different experiences. And Josh, you can hit the next slide. There's some other examples here. And so this is an example where not only did we do the architecture or interior architecture and also the interior design, but I also designed all the exhibits. And there's a picture of this bubble window below. There's the center image is like these mirrors. We even designed the offices in the back. So that image on the top right, you're going through this kind of like portal, like anatomy, like central portal, this pink curve back to the offices for the faculty that and the staff that works in the Children's Museum. But what's fascinating is it's just play. If you really think about children, not only are they insane, but they're incredibly curious, and they'll run around and they'll whack stuff or they'll run. And so the museum was set up as an infinity figure eight where there's no edges. Children can run around and they're encouraged to run. And if you see this bottom middle image, the wood slats, the armadillo, when the children run past the armadillo, wind will blow out and notes will play. So each column of those ribs are like an A note or a B note and a C note. So if multiple children are running around, they're creating a symphony. And then there's also spaces for kids that are on the spectrum. So there's like quiet and silent spaces that are comforting and calming. There's actually a room. The more calm and still you are, the more butterflies, digital butterflies fly around. So you have to be still, right? So there's all these like different ways to interact with children. And at the same time, I was designing this next slide. I was designing a corporate headquarters, not this one, but the beauty of designing a corporate headquarters and a children's museum at the time is that they mix together. So like what I thought was really fascinating, because people are like, oh, isn't that weird? And I was like, no, it's not weird. Even if you're just designing one thing like a children's museum, you should look at it as a corporate headquarters. Or if you're designing a corporate headquarters, you should also one day take out one day of your life and say, oh, what if this was a children's museum? What would happen to the design, just as an experiment? You're not wasting time. This is just processing information and challenging things. Why am I sitting in a conference room? Why isn't it fuzzy? Why isn't it something else, right? So these are images of, this was actually like a huge corporation and they wanted to do a museum. So this museum is full of technology. It's motion sensoring. That 100-foot digital wall follows you around. It knows where your hands are moving, and it creates these timelines, and it showcases information of what's happening in that company. And then you have these beautiful display cases showing the history of their products that they made. And I'm not at liberty to say some of them, but you can see the slide says Edwards Life Sciences. So you can see some of their the processes. So this is a mix of the future, like Google technology space, almost like if someone made it in Google. It's the mix of a jewelry store and it's the mix of a museum, right? And so this takes out all corporateness. The columns are chrome. The ceiling is glowing, right? This is a fun thing. And what you don't see in this image is that there's a 150-foot garage door facade that lifts up on the front, and that's how you get into this space, which I was trying to turn into a movie projector for sunset movies, but just based on the building design and the sunset, it wasn't going to be dark enough for that. And then here's a cannabis store. And the next slide is the lounge to smoke cannabis and to digest it when you're there. And this was one of the world's first lounge spaces that was approved in Hollywood, West Hollywood, sorry. And so it's, again, like, what is retail? What is lounge space? Like, is this a bar? Is this in Las Vegas? Is this a nightclub? You know, this is not like a head shop, right? And so how do you elevate something that didn't have a luxuriousness to it? Like, head shops were not luxurious. Like, following the Grateful Dead around, going to head shops, they don't look like this, you know? So how do you take context from something and stick it into something else? Like the most luxurious restaurant, and how does that become a cannabis lounge, right? How are you mixing things together? And the slide before was the display cases. Like, how do you create luxurious, like, jewelry, right? Display cases. Like, this is almost like a Vitra store mixed with, like, you know, I don't want to say Tiffany because Tiffany's blue, but, you know, the idea of like a high-end jewelry store. All right. This was the corporate headquarters like I was designing with the Children's Museum. So you have the bottom right image is this like DJ lounge downstairs with an all mirrored ceiling. So that goes out into the lounge space where the cafeteria, where they have huge presentations. And this photo is taken on this white staircase, and the white staircase goes up the stairs and turns into an all brass coffee shop. And this is all about how people can collaborate. So everything about this corporate headquarters was like no angles, no blocking. It's all about collaboration, but in separate spaces. So for privacy. So maybe maybe like Ford Motor Company is in one pod area and Uber is in another pod area, and they would never know that they're in the same building together. So you're keeping that separateness for privacy. Yeah, next. Okay, and then this is the house, which I think is great because like it says Sunday dinner party, even the Uber driver is invited. So we built this house as a machine for Sunday dinner parties. And you can see on the next slide that there are, on the top right image, you can see hundreds of people are in this house. And so when you think about entertaining in house and living, with the main goal being entertaining for Sunday dinners, how do you rethink what living means? How do you rethink function or kitchen? So in this case, we had to ask, what is a kitchen? Does it? And they were like, oh, kitchen, has upper cabinets. And I was like, well, does it need upper cabinets? And in this case, it's just a 2-story atrium in the kitchen, and it's just one giant island, in fact. Because as you know, when you go to people's houses for parties, everyone hangs around the kitchen island, which is normally like 3 feet by 3 feet. In fact, this kitchen island is 100-foot kind of intersecting U's. So you can walk through it. You have buffets, and people can hang around, and the whole entire down floor basically is kitchen. This is an interesting hotel, just showing this slide to say that this hotel is very narrow. And then when you, if you look, there's going to be a cylinder that goes all the way from the roof down into the bar. And on the next slide, you'll see it. And the reason why we were thinking about this cylinder is when you're in the bar, you can look up that cylinder. You can see people's curtains into their guest rooms, but you can also see right out to the roof and to the skylight and this bubble skylight at the top. So you can see the sun coming in, and we calculated it based on the sun patterns. But again, this is a new way of experiencing. You go through this dark lobby space of the hotel to this bar space, and then boom, you get this like natural light column going 5 stories up out the roof. And then when you're on the roof, that's where you wash your hands. So on the image, the sketch on the left, when you go up to that tube thing, that's the hand washing station from the bathrooms that are on the left and right. So you're washing your hands, and you can look down through the whole tube and see curtains. And you can't see into the guest rooms, but you can see curtains moving from the guest rooms, and you can see down into the bar. So it's a way of getting activities up and down. Okay, so then because we're talking about experience design, and maybe I should save Josh's questions. I don't want to blow them for later, but I do need to say, like, the tagline, and my wife, Gianna Wurtzel, an incredibly amazing goddess and on many dimensions and many levels, she came up with our tagline because I was talking about, and we want to design through the experience. And so she came up with our tagline, which is, we design the way we make love. And I'll leave it there, and I'll let Josh comment on it later. But the idea is that we lead with emotion and feeling, and that's how we design. We go backwards from that. We don't start with like a space. We go from the emotion first. And this slide that you're seeing, I designed with Daniel Perlin, an incredible, amazing interactive experience designer. So we created a room, and this was for Showtime. This room is to simulate multiple personality disorder. And that sounds crazy, and it is. But if that disorder is, it means that you can't separate the real voices from the imaginary voices in your head. And so that's what we did. This was, at the time, the world's longest free span CNC plywood structure. It spanned over 75 feet with no hardware, only like puzzle piece connections. And then using the technology, we filmed an actress on a green screen, and you can see her on the television. That's me sitting down on the bench. And on the television screen is a woman on the left side of the TV, because she's captured my facial recognition through facial recognition. And she moved over, and she's mocking me based on the United States of Terra television show, which is on Showtime. And she had 4 personalities. So that's a way of interacting with the space. And you would wear wireless headphones. And Daniel Perlin also created these weird sounds in your head. So it's like a silent dance disco. Everyone wore wireless headphones, and everyone had sounds in their ears. So even though the room was crowded, everyone is alone, which also feels like multiple personality disorder. So that's like a very immersive, interactive space, pushing technology in the immersive experience and also in the digital fabrication experience. Next slide. Uh, Along the immersive spaces, this was another one. This is the bottom right image is Margot Robbie. I got to film her and direct her. I worked with Daniel Perlin as well on this one, and a couple of other amazing friends that you can see us being recorded in the top right. And what we did was we recorded Margot Robbie and we digitally transformed her into a hologram. And so she would live in this upper left space, which is the final space. She was digitally projected around in these metal fabric type of extrusions. So one was a bench, the wall became bench and ceiling, and then that turned into the bar, and Margot Robbie, the hologram, who actually was the ultimate like wisdom of the Bachelor. This was for the ultimate Bachelor pad. And I was raised by a single mother, and so I didn't want the Bachelor to have the power. I wanted the woman to have the power. So she was the boss of the space. And so wherever the noise was the loudest, the digital Margot Robbie hologram would move over to that area in the space. So based on parties, she would move into the bar. She would be under the bar. The bar had a clear top, and when you put your drink down on the clear top, she was underneath the bar trying to touch your drink from below. It was really cool. Freaked people out. This was a cool project. It was in the New York Times, also designed with Daniel Perlin, who created all the technology around the audiologist using to test and to tune hearing aids, which you can see on the next slide. So this was the world's first fully immersive room to simulate real world sounds. And so when you have a hearing aid, you would go into this room on the left, you would sit in that Le Corbusier chair, you had your hearing aid in, the audiologist would hook up the wires to the hearing aid, and then using a keyboard, which you can see here on one of the images, the audiologist would choose an A, B, C, D notes, and she would switch foregrounds and backgrounds. So the images on the right, you could choose a background as a restaurant or a subway station or the beach, and the foreground would be people talking. So classroom and whatever. So you could choose a foreground and a background, and then it would sound in this room, and then the audiologist could tune the hearing aid. Very cool. We actually ended up selling the system to the United States government, and they installed it in the Veterans Association Hospital in Portland, Oregon, which we went to install it in an anechoic chamber. Just to nerd out for a second, Daniel Perlin and I were freaking out that we were inside an anechoic chamber. All right, next. Okay. This one is a music festival I designed in Brooklyn. I was living in Brooklyn, and this is in Melbourne, Australia. So we designed it 3 years in a row. It kept going 4 or 5 years. Yeah, woohoo, Portland. So this was a new way to engage with live music. So using acoustical like design principles, each room that the bands were in, so say there was 30 bands, there was 30 rooms, each room I designed and to fucked up it acoustically. So we used different materials that would change the acoustics of the room. Like the bottom right image is stuffed animals stuck on the room. One room had washer machines in it and dryers. Another room had, the top right was sound fabric hanging down from the ceiling all the way to the floor, and then we would give the band pairs of scissors and they could cut it out as they saw fit. One room was full of foam, and we gave the band a hot wire cutter. And so from Brooklyn, I set out what all the rooms would be, and then they got filled with these materials, and then the bands would go in and carve out their own spaces or modify them as they needed. And then you would go in and you would sit on the floor, or you could stand up, and again that would change the acoustics also. But this was very immersive and very interactive, and the city of Melbourne pays for all these things. It's an amazing arts program and all grants from Australia. Shout out to Melbourne. All right, next. And then we designed this space. This was supposed to be in Laguna Beach, so it was a concept. Where can you do and both? Where can you sit in silence and have community? And right now, the only place is church. Like you go to church, you sit in silence during the service and stuff, and after church, you have a community of people. Well, in Laguna Beach, there isn't anywhere to hang out and meet with people. So we wanted to create this luxurious spa experience, self-guided. So you would go in this tunnel, into this domed area, very Maria Abramovich. You would have to sit in this domed area for 15 minutes before the doors would unlock. Then you could go into your spa room and it would have all the things in the spa. tub, sauna, hot tub, showers, blah, blah, infrared heat, blah, blah. And then you could do your experience. And then you could come out of this silent room. And then next slide, you would go into the community space. And so you could even skip the spa. And once you sat in silence for 15 minutes, you could come into the community space. And it's a subscription model. And so you would have smoothies and juices and coffees and teas and all the things that you want. And you could hang out here and work or meet and chat. So this was this new idea of how could you do and both, which is a really great concept. Next. Okay, and then these are just some various things I've designed just for reference. So the top left is a chair, but it's you can see it's folded, but the bottom is also folded. So you can't sit still. So you basically rock in it no matter what you're doing. It's folded on the bottom with one fold, so it rocks. The bag on the right was made out of a Tyvek material, which is an exterior waterproofing material. But if you cut it in a funny way, it kind of expands and contracts. And so we're playing around with bags. These are cabinet pulls on the bottom left. And then on the bottom right, just like through experience and feeling, when you sit down on the toilet to go number 2, why, generally speaking, do you look at the back of a door? Like, to me, that's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So why isn't the toilet out in the living room? Right. So when I taught architecture and interior design, I would ask my students, why is the toilet in the bathroom? And I wouldn't let them put it in the bathroom until they could prove it to me. So here's an example where you're sitting on the bathroom. You have a ship portal window with one-way glass or film so people can't see in. And in this instance, the sun is setting. So that's the sunbeam coming through the glass portal into the toilet just to see. So when you're sitting on the toilet, you're eye level and you can see out. And it happens to be the Hollywood sign. When you look through that portal window, you see the Hollywood sign and the Hollywood Hills. So the experience of having this luxury. Yeah. So these are some sinks that I also designed. So that, again, like, you know, sinks don't have to be squares. They don't have to be boring. This was actually kind of based on like just curves of women, actually, right? Just like luxurious and sensuous curves. And I actually put a bid out in China through marble fabrication companies because buying these sinks like from Italy would have been $15,000. So I just designed them myself, sent this out. I created a fake email. I sent it all to China. I got 20 bids back, and we made all these sinks that you see here for like $1,000 and like $500 to ship them all DHL on an airplane. So it's just like all this experimentation. Let's test it out and see what happens. Next. This was the staircase. I designed and also in collaboration. Everything I do is in collaborations with amazing friends of mine. This was all digitally fabricated and flat, folded up to be very solid, and then we perforated it. This was that staircase in that house that was made to be Sunday dinner parties. Next. And these are just some products I did. So you can see like everything is kind of like manipulated in a funny way. So that light on the left from different views creates perfect geometry. So from one view, it creates one kind of triangle. The other, it's another one. From like the top view, it's more of a rectangle. The chair in the middle was folded flat. So it starts off as a flat piece of recycled metal and it folds up. And so there's only 3 welds. So how can you make something very lightweight and very fast to manufacture? And then this foam stool on the right, it's coated with an outdoor foam, outdoor spray material. But the idea is that there's one giant cube of foam. And based on the geometry of this, we're trying to eliminate waste of the foam. So that's where we generated that shape. So it's to reduce waste and offcuts from the foam itself. Next slide. And then 2 weird projects. The one on the left is called Silver Air, which won a bunch of awards. We used trabeculated bone as a reference, and then we ended up using foamed aluminum, but it's called Silver Air, and it changes the weight and center of gravity of the silverware, and it also changes the temperature because it's based on trabeculated bone, which NASA uses to dissipate heat from engines. When you dip the spoon into a hot bowl of soup, the heat dissipates really fast through the handle, and so when you pick up the handle, it's warm. And how does that change the flavor of the food, for example? The shoes on the right, we did as a test to then do large-scale architectural things like a band shell for bands. But we recorded sound waves and sounds around New York City, and then we used the sound waves to beam back on a pair of shoes, to modify them to create like a morphology of different shoe types. So that's, we use sound waves to design shoes. Next. The image on the left is, I wanted to try to take out the author of designing furniture. Like, how can I make it autonomous? And so we had a scientist come in and help us with magnetizing wires. So this is all magnetizing wires. And then we created a machine that would blow metal particle dust onto the wires. And so we did like 1,000 of these and took pictures to see what would happen if we designed furniture that way. The image on the right is a chair that we made for a park. We made 2 chairs. One's made out of recycled plastic bottles from one day in New York City. And then we made an exact replica of the chair out of dirt and clay and flower seeds. And so families could come choose their recipe of flower seeds, and then we would make the chair, and then we would put it in the park. And every time it rained, the chair would dissolve, and the families could come back and see how their flowers were doing and check on their flowers, and the park would turn into flowers. Next. This mirror I designed, which is called Ripple, and it has ripples in it, and it was at the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum in New York, which I'm super proud of. But what's funny about it and fascinating is that I used a military contractor to create a new fabrication technique, which is patented, to create these ripples. So that's one sheet of metal, like almost stamped in a way to create this ripple effect, but it's still flat. So it's a really interesting and cool piece, distorting your reflection. Next. Yeah, all right. I hope I wasn't talking too fast, but I wanted to make sure I got to this slide, which anything is possible. And that's my disco flower head people sketch.
All right, love it. Okay, Brooks, this was amazing. And also, like, you nailed it. It's like 30 minutes on the dot. We're going to do this thing. So as always, if you guys have questions, throw it in the chat. I'm happy to ask for you. You can ask yourself. I'm gonna like totally jump the line and ask some questions.
It was a machine gun of cool ideas. Yes.
All right. So many things. So, I and then I'm gonna jump into one other thing. Is that you're also like been on television a whole bunch too, right?
Yes. Many television shows, also so crazy stuff.
Okay, there's some like fun. There's so many fun things to pick up on. So I have like a whole bunch of post-it notes here. So let's just talk about it. Let's talk a little bit about cross-disciplinary, because I think what you were saying about cross-disciplinary just like should be like the default is like so true. And like even if you're only doing one thing, like you should also be cross-disciplinary, or you're going to be boring. You know, like. So yeah, like how have you always been that way, or like what cultivated this?
Yes, I've always been that way. I think it's it's just like if like advice for a writer, right? Like the idea of writer's block to me seems ridiculous, and I know that happens, and it's coming through fear and other things. But like there's no, it's an endless supply of ideas and experiences, and some of the best advice I heard for writers, example, is like to be a good writer, you have to go out and make experiences. You have to have experiences. You have to travel. You have to fall in love. You have to have a broken heart. All this stuff, right? And I think it's the same with designers, and multidisciplinary is like a crash course for that. So if I'm designing shoes, and those shoes were designed for United Nude, which is a really cool shoe company. If I'm designing shoes and houses at the same time, inevitably my dreamscape is going to get mixed up. My dreams are going to start blurring those together, and I'm going to have a house shoe, right? And so I think you just need to open yourself up. There's this idea of like, oh, my heart's closed. If you're like emotional, and like, let's open our hearts, right? So it's the same thing with ideas. Let's open our hearts. Let's open our minds that we can do multiple things. So like multidisciplinary also just seems like ridiculous. We are humans, and it's human nature to be multidisciplinary. It's not human nature to just do one thing over and over again. Maybe I stub my toe and then I fall on the table, and then I'm like, oh, that table shouldn't have a leg. What if I remove the leg? How can I make a table with no legs, right? Like, it's just all these things. And like, that sounds ridiculous also, like a table with no legs, right? But maybe that will help me when I'm designing a countertop, or maybe that comes in of like, oh, I thought this idea. And so I just leave them in there. And I know like ideas can be like ridiculous. Like no one wants a table that's floating, but like, what if that was, that could be cool, right? So I like this idea of multidisciplinary thinking where there's nothing wrong, right? There are no bad ideas. There are no wrong ideas, right? It's just like maybe not the right application for that thing, right? But for me, I have to put them out there first. I have to say them out loud, and then I can remove them for the thing that I'm doing, like a process of
Yeah.
elimination.
No, I love it. I love it. Well, it's interesting because like I have an agency and like, everyone like there's an org chart and people have their things. There's like design, technology, blah, blah, blah. And like, and I've read all these blogs about like, okay, the McKinsey T and people should have broad base, but like one thing that they do really well. And I'm just like thinking like how unstable that T is. Like if you only do one thing really, really well, and then like ChatGPT takes that thing from you, you are just like,
Yeah.
and it's like and like you have so many different sort of capabilities. It's like in some ways it makes it there's a stability in that.
You know what yeah, absolutely. And what I'm excited about is the process, the design process. And so like I don't I specialize in the design process. That gives
Yeah.
me the freedom and the creativity and the power to do many things. I can apply this thinking to anything, right? And so that's what I'm excited about. I don't really care what the end result is. What I care about is the process and the journey of getting there. And so that's why it's all experimentation. And I'm checking like, what's the feeling that I'm having, right? How can I recreate these feelings? And so I think it's more like the process and not the specialization of like bathroom designs or the specialization of whatever aesthetic you want to say, like Japanese, nightclubs. Like, oh, I can do a Japanese nightclub. I can also do an Italian villa, and I can also do like mid-century modern. I can do all those things, right? Because it's just the process of the design.
I love it. Gigi had a question. Gigi, you want me to ask for you? Or you want to? Oh, she's coming on. Are you coming on?
Was grumpy. So I was mostly asking, I guess, a follow on to that, which is what do you do with your in progress ideas and where do you put them and how do you work with a team on them? It's not like you stick things in Figma that are multidisciplinary. How do you artifact them? How do you language them?
Awesome question, Gigi. Great name. My wife's nickname is Gigi also, so thank you for being the first question. I used to have this thing called what I called the cemetery of great ideas, and it was all my sketchbooks bound together, and I wrote it on there. It said cemetery of great ideas, and then one day I was like, well, that has a kind of a negative connotation, right? Like they're not dead; they're just like in transition, like from one spirit plane to the next. They're just in transition, and they haven't like a soul. It hasn't found the right body yet, or the right parents, I should say, right? And so it's looking for the right parents. And so what I did is I opened the cemetery of great ideas and I started doing them, whatever that meant. So that chair that I presented, that folded flat, the black one with 3 welds, I actually had the dream of that. I woke up, I cut it out of paper, and I left one flat one, and then I folded one up. I spray painted it gold, and I stuck it inside of a mason jar with a lid, and then I sealed the lid, and then I stuck the jar on my shelf. And then when I met the right metal fabricator who could laser cut metal, I said, "Hey, look what I got! I got this jar with this chair in it. You want to make this?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so we made the chair, and it was super fun. So I kept them. Now, to your point, like how do I collaborate with people? I use Post-it notes. We have a mind explosion on the wall. Boom, boom, boom. This, and then I photograph it, and then I can save it and I can pull it up later and say, oh, what was that idea? I remember that. I remember that Post-it note. I'll do color coded poster notes. Also, if I can like get the ideas into categories, I'll do different colors. But then I document them. But mostly I'll remember most of them. most of them.
I love it. It's funny. I'm also like a Post-it note fetishist. So like, it's a good. It's so funny though because like I also, I was at like the MoMA store the other day and they had like a book of like someone's sketch. It was like some artist sketchbooks,
Yeah.
and I'm like, in some ways, like that felt so dangerous because it's like, because because if you're going to treat an artist's sketches like something that's like precious and that should be like documented and sold at Sotheby's or Christie's or whatever, like you're kind of like you're not allowing things to be just like throwaway. And just allowing a safe space just like to like that stuff's trash. And I just love that Post-its are such immediate trash.
Love it. I love it. I also use I think it's just called Sketches on my iPad Pro. And I just like doodle and sketch all these things. So I have different folders in that app, which is a free app. And if you want to pay for $4, it's like for free forever. But then you can have multiple folders. So I have like art. Every day I draw a circle with my eyes closed on my iPad to see if I can stop it and link up the exact points. And I've done it many times, magically enough. So I do the circles with my eyes closed every day. Anyways, so I use my iPad to document them.
All right, love it. Okay, we're going to go to Ezekiel, Trisha, and then Tish. Ezekiel, you have a question. Let's do it.
Hi, Brooks.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. Something I am challenged by at times is how to get people on the client team to receive and engage with like a concept or some prototype in a productive way, meaning not taking it that seriously or like this kind of finished thing, but really being more open for that being like a conversation and like building on it. Have you found effective ways to kind of socialize the engagement and the reception of prototypes and concepts with clients? Do you find that people kind of get too attached to the concept as it is instead of like playing with it?
That's a great question. I've had many opportunities to experiment on that and experiment on my clients. The best way that I found to do that is to create a narrative and to communicate around the emotion of the experience of the thing. So say I have this idea for an entire ceiling full of lights, just whatever that is, right? So I have some sketches and some images, and I talk about the experience. Okay, now one time I even had my client close their eyes and I mixed up a Negroni. And when they closed their eyes, I waved the Negroni under their nose. And I said, okay, now imagine you're walking into this space. And this is the feeling that you're going to have. And when you open your eyes slowly, all of these lights are going to be up in the ceiling, like another galaxy. And I'm talking about the experience. And that's fucking crazy shit to put that many lights in the ceiling and to have a galaxy when you come in. And so I try to do it that way. And I also try to put I know that's going to be expensive. So I try to get it in approved first with the client. This is approved first. And then no one can VE it out later because everything is built around that thing. So I try to get that in first, but I try to do it with the story. What I found is if I show clients too many weird sketches, it freaks them out. They don't know what to do with it. And then they're like, well, how long is that going to take? And how much is that going to cost? So what I do is I do all the work first. So that ceiling light, I already talked to a lighting company. I already had 1 or 2 meetings. It's not a lot of time. I don't hold them to the price. It's just like a quote, like, is it $5,000 or $100,000? Like I need to know what it is, right? Roughly. And so I already come with, it's in the budget because I'm making the budget and I put the light fixture in the budget. No one can take it out. It's already in, right? If you do the whole project and then you want to do this cool light, it doesn't fit into the budget later. So those are a couple of tricks that I've tried before. I hope that helps.
By the way, I'm gonna let Tish ask her question, but I want to come back to this idea of art and design because I think that there's such an interesting distinction between an artist and a designer, and in who you serve. And it's such bullshit. It's such bullshit. Like as a designer, I know that I don't always I'm not here just to implement the client's vision. I know that. Like deep down, I know that.
Anyway, that's a great question. I had an amazing chat with this woman, Susan, who's head at the John Hopkins University and John Hopkins. She's the head of the International Arts and Minds Neuroscience Research Center. And I had a chat with her about art and design yesterday. A super fun chat.
All
right. What's the next question?
Okay, we're going to talk more about that with Tish. Ask your question.
TV?
I'll ask for you.
Is it real? Is it not real? Hack my home?
Ask your question.
You want me to? Okay. Just thank you, Blake, for what you're doing, and I love the title of the talk, checking in with the quantum, because I mean one of the things that's just blowing my mind is that 100 years after, the ideas, of quantum ideas sort of came to us, unbelievably, the majority of the world, and even places where you think, is just unrelentingly deterministic to a point of disaster. I mean, my field is AI research, and honestly, I am just gobsmacked that some of the biggest money, some of the most advanced thinkers in the world are trapped in a vision of a deterministic future for AI that is so mind-bogglingly off base. And I really think, it's just that the work you're doing, the way you're approaching it is actually, even though I'm working in AI and having to build a platform, I put it in the chat what I'm doing. I feel that I have to open this stuff. Eventually I want to get these simulations to a point ordinary people and designers and everyone can interact. Because if we don't have people like you interacting with this work, we are really in a very false vision of the future of AI. I mean, for a start, the distinction between artificial and natural. I mean, these deterministic things, which no one's denying that, classical determinism has its place and there's many things you can do with it. But it just blows my mind. And I think what you're doing is the only way to approach it. You have to find ways to, I know you've said it in your wonderful language, because I suppose it's what you're working on. But anyway, big thank you. I hope to eventually get there with AI and allow designers to play with understanding the future and what it will be in ways that are really meaningful instead of honestly, foolish.
Absolutely.
All right, Brooks, let's talk quantum.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks,
well, thank you so
Tish.
much, Tish. That's a great. I love that you used many of my favorite words. Gobsmack was one of them. And yeah, and please invite me out. I'm happy to meet with you and the team, and we can collaborate or share knowledge and information about the future of AI, which I'm also playing and dabbling in.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, but to your point too, like the quantum, and you're right. No one's really doing it much. My wife and some of her people that she's connected with are starting to reach out and connect with the quantum and bring that back earthside. So she's a great person to collaborate with on also. But you're right. What is fascinating is everybody's designing for this 3D reality that we live in. But all this information is coming from other sources. The quantum field is happening. Right, it's fascinating. The children being born now. My 3-year-old daughter is one of them. Has been born with different codes than I possess.
You hit a theme I love. It's like every generation we're creating a super intelligence, and meanwhile we're throwing billions of dollars to speculating how super intelligence might emerge from where it won't, deterministic, hyper rationality and all the rest. It's just, I don't know. I am gobsmacked.
Well, there's 2 books I just read. One, Novacine. It's so great. It's like the next anthropological phase of humanity. It's short. You can read it in 1 hour.
I'll share it.
Novacine. And then the other book I just read was Homo Deus, which is the future of humans, the next evolution, where humans are becoming gods. Right, we have all this technology. We're trying to live forever. All this stuff. So both are really interesting. Neither mentioned the quantum, which is like really unfortunate, actually.
A little unfortunate.
but they're getting there, and it's pretty fascinating. The other funny thing, Tish, while you were talking, you cut out. It went to a black screen, and I thought also like big tech hearing you like cut you out on mute.
Maybe.
And it was like beep beep censor. Okay.
Maybe. But I think what's interesting, you mentioned the books don't mention quantum, but one of the things you have to do, I rarely mention quantum, because if you want to be shut out of any conversation with, hyper-rationalists or determinists, it's not going to take you far. So I've been trying to be very creative with that too, but that's why I'm in awe of your work, because you've just found so many ways to.
I think it's really interesting, because I think there's this thing where every generation describes like computers or like however the world works on like whatever the technologies at the time, it's like all that stuff around like pressure and like like all the stuff that Freud talked about, about, like was all built around like the steam engine. And I think that you're right. Like a lot of the thinking, the determinism has a lot to do with like algorithms and the way that we understand like contemporary, like the last generation of computing. And I think AI is a new paradigm of computing, and then is maybe not the final paradigm of computing. So I that's a whole other rabbit hole. But we
don't need to worry about losing our jobs, because as designers and artists, I'm picking stuff out of the quantum. AI can't do that. AI is only picking stuff from the data set that's down here.
It can't do it yet, but you're absolutely right. I mean, deterministic AI and is just, this is not, it's not.
All right. But I'm gonna pivot us into like a totally banal place. Okay. I'm gonna pivot us to Netflix. Okay. Netflix. Brooks, you have you're on Netflix.
I'm on a Netflix show that just won an Emmy. Thank you. Yes.
Congratulations. So like I think but also like if you want more Brooks, there's a lot of Brooks on that Netflix show. And it's really fascinating. But I think one of the things I actually also really wanted to talk about, it's a little bit, it's a little bit more close to earth. But and again, I think it goes back to this idea of art and design. Which is like, who do you serve and how do you get your vision out into the world? And like I think honestly, home renovation shows, which is what you're on, is like such a fascinating paradigm for like client services, and like I'm just so curious, like how, like how does that like look in like actually?
Well, you talked about like what's the difference between an artist and a designer. A designer has a client. Right, generally speaking, right? That's one quick difference. What's interesting about having a client, and I'm about to jump the shark, Henry Winkler, because I'm going to be my own client. My wife and I are going to do this house together as this huge project. So it's an interesting thing of like how do you work with a client, and especially on TV, like. The thing is, the houses that we renovated on the show, the clients don't see anything ahead of time. It's all secret. They have to move out of the house, and they're not allowed to do drive-bys. They can't look. They can't sneak. The show is called Hack My Home on Netflix, and so they're trying to get a view, but they have to fully trust me and my co-host to do something amazing and incredible. And but that's what they signed up for. They have to relinquish control and trust that we're going to do it. We're all professionals. We have a roboticist from MIT. We have a general contractor. We have a professional interior designer, and then me, which I was on the innovation spectrum because they didn't want to say wild card. But that was my original title was wild card, which I'll also take. But innovation happened to be my title of the show. But yeah, I think your thing around clients and like interfacing with clients, and a little bit like the previous question too, was like how do you interface with that? And it's really fascinating. And I design with feeling and as a collaborative experience with my clients. So unlike like maybe superstar architects who have a style, I don't have a style because everything is a collaboration and an emotion. So how could you have a style if that's how you design, right? I'm designing with every client. Every client has different emotional needs and empathy levels. And so everything is designed totally unique. That's where the process comes out with the clients. But to your point, like with Netflix, like we designed all 8 episodes and all 8 houses simultaneously, and they were all under construction at the same time. So all 8 of them were happening, and they each took about two weeks, give or take, someone with the bout of COVID here or there. But it was very quick and insanity. But there was some prep ahead of time to get building permits and that kind of stuff. But the clients never saw anything until the reveal, which was live on the TV show.
Well, I love the idea of a client not seeing anything, and I because it's like, does that make them a client? Does that invalidate the definition of a client?
Well, what I love is like, I'd like a patron. I think that's the word, right? Back from the Renaissance. Like, I have a patron. They're just like funding my life, and then I'll make stuff,
Yeah.
And like that would be great. So it's kind of like a patron where like I have free reign, and then I design your house for you. Like I would do that. I would do that in a heartbeat, no problem. We could have one meeting. I could share like a concept deck with them, and then once it's approved, then I go ahead and do it. Like it could. Because I work a little bit different. I always do a concept deck first. I can't not do that. So I won't do a project if the client doesn't want the concept deck first, because that concept deck creates the North Star where everything is in reference from that like guidepost.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting because in some ways you're saying like the difference between a designer and an artist is like an artist doesn't have a client, but of course they do have patrons and they have to like people who buy it, or they're starving artists, you know.
Yeah.
But it's and I think that the word that kept coming up was this idea of trust, which is that like in order to have a patron or in order like you even have a successful design relationship, you have to build a lot of trust.
These words that you're using, like I'm having a hard time as I get older and as I check more into the quantum using words like artist or designer or architect.
Yeah.
I actually I'm an architect, I'm an interior designer, blah blah. I call myself an artist now, and also my wife, who is incredible, and I attribute most of the ideas to her. She's like, Brooks, you're so uncomfortable with this word architect. Why don't you just call yourself an artist? You're an artist. And I was just like, what? And so it's finally sinking in. And now I'm just saying that I'm an artist and I do these things. Of course, I have clients and I'll do an interiors, and I'm an architect. I'll do architecture. But overall, like the vision that I see is artist. I'm trying to create something that someone will have an experience of, whether that's a space or an emotion or a feeling. Yeah.
All right. So we have 3
Someone
minutes
asked
left.
what's in a concept deck, but a
let's
concept deck.
Talk about we're going to round it out with a concept deck. Let's do it.
Yeah. Concept decks generally are like somewhere between 10 and 30 pages. Kind of like the cemetery of great ideas. They're a brain dump, but they're cohesive. It's not like random styles. It's like, here's a style, but you're watching it build. So here's like, maybe there's a scene from a movie of like 2 people dancing, and then maybe there's a dandelion, and then maybe there's a painting, right? And then it starts to evolve into a staircase, or maybe there's this amazing, like insane Italian floor, or a swimming pool, or some Yves Saint Laurent suit. So it's created to create this feeling, and that's what's in the concept deck. Does it show a picture of a bathroom? Maybe. Does it show a picture of a door? Maybe, right? So it just depends on this emotion. And I try to put everything in the ingredients, right? Think about like cooking ingredients, which is fun because I'm making a cookbook, but they're recipes to simulate the feeling of falling in love. So what is that, right? It's a recipe. So maybe the recipe says close eyes, sit in chair, right? Smell rosemary, a spoonful of honey. And you could do this to someone, right? You could do this to someone that you're falling in love with, or your spouse right now, and say, hey, honey, I maybe we've been married for 10 years, but this is the feeling I had when we fell in love. Let me recreate it for you. So I'm making a recipe book. This was also Gianna's idea. We are making it. So we're making this recipe book of these experiences to fall in love. And we're going to do this as a simulation, as this immersive experience. We're going to have this apothecary in the Laguna Art Museum. And so people will come in, they'll be able to make their own recipes. We'll record them, write them down, and put them in the book.
I love it. All right. This is lovely. We got a lot of words in, man. This is fantastic. Thanks everybody for joining. This is a super fun conversation. I know Brooks is going to make himself available for any questions. Feel free to funnel them through me. Brooks, do you have any sort of parting words for the group as we kind of are here today?
Say yes to everything. Those are my parting words. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and energy and great questions. Tish, give me a shout out. Let's do some AI stuff. Anyone else, feel free to email me or contact me on Instagram. I'll happy to respond.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll hope to see you at future spaces. All right.
Awesome.
Have a good one all.
Cheers.
See ya.